Let's talk now to Curtis Adigba, attorney, foreign affairs analyst. He joins us virtually from Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Adigba. Thank you for your time on the program this morning.
Morning, Ladi. I'm actually in Lagos.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you for joining us all the same.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
The situation on the ground now is kind of like a stalemate, if you like. Western support is ensuring that Ukraine has enough arms to survive, but it's not strong enough to beat the Russians. The Russians, on the other hand, are being stymied by sanctions of all types and of all shapes, and they have, of course, also witnessed some military setbacks. Do you think that it is time to discuss peace?
Well, it's never late to discuss peace, no matter the situation on ground. Now, for Russia, this is dragging on for too long. Because if you match their strength in terms of weapons and influence in the region, no one believed that by now Ukraine will be standing at all. Like you observed, the Western world are backing Ukraine, sending in help, and Ukraine is standing, even though it's not matching Russia in terms of military strength, but it's standing. And that alone is enough damage to the reputation of Russia, a superpower, when you talk about military arsenal. So I think this is the right time for the world at large to begin to speak to Russia more about making peace, because this is not going to be determined by the use of force.
Given that scenario, let us now come to the mechanics of everything here. There are those who have pointed out that Russia attacked Ukraine unprovoked, quote and unquote, and there are others who say that Russia is guiding its own security. My previous guest on the program this morning did say that the situation by which comparisons are being made between what Russia is doing now and what other superpowers have done in the past is not exactly correct. But do you think that Russia has a point in its security concerns, and that any negotiation to end this war should take that into consideration? Otherwise, we will be looking at déjà vu, shall we say.
Okay, so let's look at it this way. I think it's a matter of perspective. Now, if there is an issue on the table, you are bound to find people with different perspective on the issue. Now, this is Russia's claim. Ukraine is a strategic asset as far as Russia is concerned, and it's too close for comfort for NATO and the West to have any influence in Ukraine. Ukraine has not hidden her desire to join NATO or the European Union. And of course, Ukraine will not be the first country to aspire to do so. Don't forget that out of the 15 countries that used to be the Soviet Union, countries like Poland, Lithuania, Liechtenstein, Romania, Bulgaria, Tajikistan, and many of them have joined Europe, and they have also joined NATO. Now, Ukraine consistently wants to be part of NATO because of the same reason that Russia is doing, because of the same fear of what Russia is doing to them right now, which is to be shielded and protected from Russia. Now, Russia, on the other hand, feels that Ukraine is too close for comfort, and that once NATO or Europe steps their foot on Ukraine, it will be pushing Russia further down, and Russia will lose her influence. And so this is what is at stake. Look, in 2008, I think Russia also went to Georgia in pursuit of the same goal. But this is the reality of the situation. Putin, from the day he became president of Russia, had just one goal in mind: reestablish the boundaries of the old Soviet Union. And Putin is going to come at you with excuses, to justify what he's doing all over Europe. Except he stopped, he's not going to stop. In 2014, he moved into Crimea. That was shortly after the Russia-leaning president, former president, Viktor Yanukovych, was removed from power by massive protests of the Ukrainians because he was against Ukraine joining Europe. And Putin used that as an excuse to move into Crimea, annex Crimea as part of Russia, and he's in the same area now, in the Donbass area, trying to do the same thing. So I understand when people say, this is pretense, Western powers, superpowers will always find excuses. But don't forget that Ukraine is now a sovereign nation. From 1991, when it became an independent nation, it attained our own sovereignty. Now, if you compare that situation to what America did in Iraq and in other parts of in Afghanistan, of course, there were reasons for strategic national interests of America that was at stake. Now, eventually, we found out about Iraq that the reasons given for invading Iraq, of course, were something that were cooked up. But the reality is that we cannot say because something was wrong somewhere, if it is wrong now, it has to be right because someone else did something that was wrong. We can't just do that. Look at the poor people in Ukraine who are suffering from the aggression of Russia. They are not involved in the day-to-day politics of influence between President Zelensky and President Putin. So there has to be some sense. The world has to come together. Apart from supporting Ukraine to stand firm and defend our sovereignty, the world also needs to trigger mechanism for peace right now because the suffering is becoming too much. We are not hearing so much about the Russian side, but of course, don't also underestimate the fact that Russia is suffering from what is happening.
That's correct. And the other way of looking at this, of course, is that all wars end with peace, or at least peace talks. And even when there are military victories, those who are losers also need to still be talked to. And that brings me to who you think could champion this, because it seems as if many of those who have the leverage have taken sides. So who is it that can be considered by both parties as neutral enough, yet have the kind of leverage to get both of them to negotiate, as it were, reasonably, especially because both sides seem to be backed by various people?
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's difficult to look around the horizon and say, look, this is the perfect peacemaker in this situation. But again, in international politics, neutrality is a phantom. It's not real. It's all about strategic interests. Now, I think China still has some leverage over Russia. And a lot of people will say, how is that possible? Because China is in a similar situation. And China is supporting Russia because in the future, it might also want to invade Vietnam over the same kind of situation. But the truth is that Russia right now is busting. Russia depends on her gas and her military, to show her strength on the global scene. Now, the military is winning in the sense that it has not achieved that clinical victory that it thought was possible in Ukraine. Now, on the economic side, European nations are beginning to look to countries like Qatar and others to get their gas supply. Now, what that means is that the Russian economy is going to be in serious trouble. And so, if Vladimir Putin is brought to face reality on the situation by China, or a country like Canada that has not shown so much hands in the crisis, I think there's a chance for peace.
Indeed. Thank you so very much, Mr. Curtis Adigba, attorney, foreign affairs analyst, joining us virtually, of course, from the nation's commercial capital here in Lagos. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.